Hi, you're on the Bible Forum. I'm Warren Sprouse. We're here every Sunday night from 8 until 10 p.m. Eastern. I'm going to talk to you a little bit tonight about social developments, specifically robots in war. This comes from prophecynewswatch.com. Apparently, there are dozens of autonomous war machines capable of deadly force conducting a field training exercise south of Seattle. No, not tonight. This was back in last August of last year. The exercise involved no human operators, just robots powered with artificial intelligence, looking for mock enemy combatants. The exercise, organized by our Defense Department, the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, a research division of the Pentagon, armed the robots with radio transmitters designed to simulate a weapon firing. One publication said the demonstrations reflect a subtle shift in the Pentagon's thinking about autonomous weapons as it becomes clearer that machines can outperform humans at evaluating complex situations or operating at high speed. And today, military planners are moving ahead with incorporating autonomous weapon systems on the modern battlefield. The question was asked, is it within a human's ability to pick out which robots have to be engaged and then make 100 individual decisions? Is it even necessary to have a human in the loop? Lieutenant General Clinton Hinote, Deputy Chief of Staff for Strategy, Integration, and Requirements at the Pentagon, said that's the question. Timothy Chung, the DARPA program manager in charge of the swarming project, told publication Wired that last year's exercise was for that very purpose. When faced with complex attacks, Chung said, the robots could perform the mission better than humans because people aren't quick enough to react. What he actually said was, quote, the systems can do better from not having someone intervene, end of quote. Now, apparently, none of this is perfect, at least not yet. Still needs people in the loop. But with the new and more reliable algorithms, that's where it's heading. When? Well, the speculation is around 2029. I won't be here. Well, maybe I will. Trumpet.com is quoting a psychologist in the United Kingdom who worked to craft a government messaging program on COVID-19 lockdowns. He recently admitted that stoking fear to get people to listen to the government was a totalitarian tactic. The psychologist, his name is Gavin Morgan, said, quote, clearly, using fear as a means of control is not ethical. Using fear smacks of totalitarianism. It's not an ethical stance for any modern government. By nature, I'm an optimistic person, but all this has given me a more pessimistic view of people. On the abortion scene, ChristianHeadlines.com, on Monday, the High Court announced that it would consider the constitutionality of a 2018 Mississippi law, a law that prohibits abortion after the 15th week of a woman's term. The law includes exceptions for medical emergencies and fetal abnormalities. The justices, in an order, said they would limit the scope of the case to one question. Are all laws restricting pre-viability abortions unconstitutional? It is the most significant abortion case in more than a decade, and it could lead to the dismantling of Roe v. Wade, the 1973 decision that legalized abortion nationwide. The The Supreme Court agreed last Monday to consider a major rollback of abortion rights, saying it will decide whether states can ban abortions before a fetus can survive outside the womb. The case involves a Mississippi law that would prohibit abortions after that 15th week pregnancy we talked about. The state's ban had been blocked by lower courts as being inconsistent with Supreme Court precedent that protects a woman's right to obtain an abortion before the fetus can survive outside her womb. The law in question has been on the books in Mississippi since 2018, but it was blocked after a federal court challenge. That's why the state's only abortion clinic is still open today. That clinic will perform abortions up to 16 weeks. That's 4 months after impregnation, to which many conservatives say is a step too far. Here in South Carolina, we just got a new fetal heartbeat bill. Did you read about it? Let me quote to you. The South Carolina Fetal Heartbeat and Protection from Abortion Act, by adding Article 6 to Chapter 41, Title 44, so as to require testing for a detectable fetal heartbeat before an abortion is performed on a pregnant woman. It's designed to prohibit the performance of an abortion if a fetal heartbeat is detected. That bill passed overwhelmingly in both houses in February of this year. If you collect 100 black ants and 100 red ants, and you put them in a glass jar, nothing will happen. But if you take the jar and you shake it violently, and then you leave it on the table, the ants inside will start killing one another. The reds believe that black is the enemy, while black believes the red is the enemy. The truth is, the real enemy is the person who shook the jar. Can we learn from nature? The same is true in society. Men versus women, left versus right, rich versus poor, faith versus science, gossip, rumors, and so forth. Before we fight each other, ask yourself, who shook the jar and why? Do you have any idea the degree of disinformation that we're being exposed to? The JewishNewsService.org wrote an article this week about Black Lives Matter, explaining how they stand in solidarity with the Palestinians. It's not Israel's imagination, that's what the group tweeted. We are a movement, it said, committed to ending settler colonialization in all forms, and will continue to advocate for Palestinian liberation. Always have, always will be. Free Palestine. Note to self. Historically, the so-called Palestinians are the settler colonials. ChristianHeadlines.com with a little atheistic logic in a discussion with famed Richard Dawkins. He was asked to explain how he knows that suffering will increase following the birth of a baby with Down syndrome. His answer? Well, I don't know that for certain. But it seems to me to be plausible. If a child has any kind of disability, then you probably would increase the amount of happiness in the world by having another child instead. Did you hear the logic? The purpose of procreation is your happiness. It's the happiness in the world. It has nothing to do with the child. Children with Down syndrome bring no happiness, or perhaps not as much happiness as, say, a healthy but arrogant child, a healthy but destructive child. You do know Down syndrome children bring great happiness. They are usually loving, pleasant children. They can be otherwise, but then so can you. When asked once more if he had any sort of evidence to back up his claim, Dawkins was at a loss, saying, "I have no direct evidence, it just seems plausible." Dawkins' reasoning is based on years of racist, misogynistic eugenics propaganda that has its roots with Planned Parenthood founder Margaret Sanger and Nazi Germany. According to the Catholic News Agency, Sanger argued abortion should be used to weed out the weak and only keep the strong, a line of reasoning that 434 human rights organizations have denounced as barbaric. In Nazi Germany, abortion was used in eugenics tribunals to force women who were deemed unfit from getting pregnant. Then, as the Association for Interdisciplinary Research in Values and Social Change reports in a journal article on abortion in Nazi Germany in 1935 under Nazi rule, the sterilization law was changed to include abortions first, before sterilizations. This was the first time abortion was ever legalized in German history, making a radical shift in government position on abortion. Who did it? The Nazis. We recoil in shock and horror at the philosophy acted out by Nazi Germany. But today, we are Nazi Germany, philosophically. The Nazis were just ahead of us. Why? Well, because of their unabridged spiritual orientation. They were atheists. And that's exactly what we are becoming, an atheistic nation. It's going to get worse. And finally, an oxymoron. I'm going to talk to you about transgender Christians. This from ChristianHeadlines.com. Have you heard of transgender Christians? The largest Christian denomination in Sweden posted an open letter this month to the transgender community declaring that it too is transgender. It's called the Church of Sweden, a Lutheran denomination with more than 5 million members. Posting the letter on its official website with the names of nearly 1,000 people who signed it. I know, 5 million members, 1,000 people signed it. It must be what we believe. It was authored by 6 individuals, 4 of whom are priests. The letter read in part, quote, "We are writing to you from a church that is also trans, a church made up of people," the letter said. People are different. We have confirmands, that's people in line to be confirmed. We have employees, church wardens, elected representatives, and other parishioners who define themselves as transgender people. Therefore, the church consists of transgender people. So the church could be described as trans, end of quote. What about being described as bigots? I'm sure there's some bigots in the group. How about liars? The list goes on. And surely there are more bigots and liars in a community than there are transgender. Transgender people represent 1.6% of the population in Sweden. It's a 2005 to 2012 survey. That's more than twice what we have here in the United States. We only have 6.6%, 0.6%. That's about 2 million people. We have 200 times more Christians than that. And the government wants us to sit down and shut up. The letter goes on to compare the transgender community to the biblical character Hagar, the slave girl who was exploited by those who owned her. This according to that letter. When she's no longer needed, the letter says, she is driven out into the desert with her child to a probable death. Her child was 12 years of age. Her waters run out. She puts her child under a bush because she thinks he's going to die. Now, the assumption here is that Abraham did not give her enough food and water. He left her to get home on her own. He didn't care about her. That is completely out of character with anything we know about Abraham. In the story, when God hears the child crying, God's angel speaks to Hagar, saying, "Do not be afraid." And God shows Hagar a well of water so that she can give the child a drink. It's a well that she didn't see, but it was there. The life of the child, this child of Hagar, does not end in the desert. The child grows up, and God promises Hagar that the child's people will grow and become a great nation. Those people are among Israel's most virulent persecutors today. The transgender Lutheran writes, "Sometimes we are like Hagar. People with power over our lives talk about us and treat us as if we are an object, something they own." Well, in those days, you did own slaves. We did it here. It was as wrong then as it was for us. But transgenderism fixes all that? No. It simply offers people another way they can fight back, disrupting the status quo, being different, wanting their rights, dominating the culture. And that, by the way, is the goal.